Could it be? Could it be? It is out of here!
And it's a no-hitter! Unbelievable! Ruiz and Halladay embrace!
World champions!
It is bedlam at the bank as Bryce Harper has put the Phillies on top!
We're talking about the Giants here. Son!
Hello and welcome to the Specific Jawns podcast here on Barker Ball Media Network. Do me a favor, before I start talking, just hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, because I don't want to interrupt what we're about to do by begging you to leave a comment or any of that kind of stuff to help the algorithm. I'm going to get it out of the way now, do that stuff. Okay, now that being said, we got a lot to talk about today. I'm Pat Barker, joined by my good friends Mike Sambuco and Bubba, and this is the big one, guys. Timing worked out well for us. We were unable to record on Sunday, and we said at the time, well, we'll go on Tuesday, and who knows, maybe we will have some major personnel changes to discuss, and sure enough, here we are. The Phillies are in the middle, as we speak, of Game 1 of the Donnie baseball era. Don Mattingly taking over as the interim manager after the firing of Rob Thomson. Rob Thomson, of course, joined the team in 2022 as the interim manager after Joe Girardi was fired midseason, took the Phillies to the World Series where they lost in 6 games, returned to the playoffs, coming up short 3 years in a row, and after a 9-19 start to the season this year, he finds himself on the way out. I'm going to save my thoughts on this until after I hear you guys, but that is the news. That's where we're at. Topper is out. No one else is out. Dombo's still there. Kevin Long is still there. Topper is gone. Mattingly took his place. Gentlemen, react.
I'll start off by saying today's a sad day. I'm wearing black because it feels like it's a funeral. It's Topper's funeral. He's a well-liked presence in the clubhouse. For all intents and purposes, he seems like a good leader. Really turned around that 2022 season when Joe Girardi was fired and he was brought in as the interim. Just about every manager, media insider, player, front office member, all have glowing things to say about him as a person and as a manager. That being said, a 9-19 start, somebody had to take the hit here, and it was him. He's the leader of the coaching staff. He's the first guy that a typical rough start to the season, manager is usually the first fall guy. Just looking holistically at his Phillies tenure, he had 4 total playoff appearances, that 1 NL pennant, 2 division titles. I would say it's the third best era of Phillies baseball that he led. He has the best managerial win percentage among all managers since the beginning of the 20th century. Second most wins above 500 behind only Charlie Manuel. It's already been reported that he has an open offer to take an advisory role within the Phillies org whenever he's ready to do so. So he's not burned any bridges. It's a guy that I think people want around the organization. Last thing I'll say on just the idea of Topper as a Philly and his legacy, it would not surprise me if he ends up on the Phillies Wall of Fame. For all the things that I said in the previous statement, he's in the likes, in my eyes, of the Dallas Green, Charlie Manuel, John Vukovich, Paul Owens, all of which were coaches or managers of the Phillies that are on the Wall of Fame, and he deserves that type of recognition once the dust ends up settling. I think there's a lot of really unhappy people in the Phillies organization today, seeing that he's the one and the only one taking the fall. But the players know that it really is on them. The players probably are feeling a lot of guilt right now. There's a lot of sad, unhappy individuals in the clubhouse that wish they could have performed better to save his job. but obviously that didn't happen, and now we have Don Mattingly filling in on an interim basis, and that's the first of what could be many changes this season, or even this could be a front office change down the road. This could be significant player changes down the road, but the first domino to fall after a 9-19 start is Topper.
Yeah, Mike, well said. It's tough to see Topper go. He's a great guy, very much beloved in the way Charlie Manuel was. Honestly, if the Phillies could have pulled out a World Series in the past couple of years, he would have been remembered exactly like Charlie in that way. He's a great guy for sure, without a doubt. Everyone speaks glowingly of him. But I don't know. I've been going back and forth on this all day. Like, oh, he's a great. It sucks that he's the one falling on the sword here, but also, did he choose to fall on the sword to not give up the other guys? Did Dombo go to him and say, hey, you got to fire some guys? And he goes, no, I'm not going to do that. Maybe he takes the fall instead. Maybe that's why Kevin Long still sticking around. But it is tough to see Topper go. A couple weeks ago, I wanted Topper gone for sure. We all wanted some change. I wanted something to change, and yeah, you're exactly right. Top manager is always going to be the first one to go. It just sucks that it came to this, but it's what these players need. This is all on the players. The players, I'm pretty sure, are very aware this is all on them, but this is what they need. They all love Topper. This is going to shock them, and I mean, so far tonight we are still up 5-0. So hey, it's working all right. The offense looks good tonight. We're doing things we haven't done in a while. So I mean, it's obviously only one game. It's tough to say if that's going to stay, but it sucks that this is what had to happen. If the Phillies end up playing well and continuing to play well after this, it's a shame this is what had to happen. That Topper had to get canned because he is a good manager. I do think he missed a couple things in maybe the playoffs against the Dodgers last year. Got a little outmanaged by Dave Roberts, but that doesn't mean he should have been fired for it. And it's tough to see him go. He's definitely. I don't know if I'm throwing him on the Wall of Fame, but also he does have. Yeah, it's tough to deny his resume as well for throwing him on the Wall of Fame when everyone else is up there too. So I don't know. Tough one to say. Parker, what do you think? Is he Wall of Fame worthy?
Compared to the other 143 years of this organization, yeah. When you consider how long the Phillies have been around and how unsuccessful they have been, it's pretty embarrassing. So to have a guy come in and make the playoffs 4 years in a row and go to a World Series and lead the league in wins one year and win a couple division titles is almost unfathomable. I mean, really, he instantly becomes like a top 3 or 4 manager in franchise history, which is pretty amazing considering all the griping I've been hearing over the last month about how he has to go and he's an idiot and he's this and that. And I do think people soften their stances today, and now they seem like reflective more than anything. Look, I'm caught in the middle on this thing because as a person, not even as a baseball fan, just as a person, in any field, I wish that there were more meritocracies. I wish that life was more fair. I wish that people were evaluated, fairly. I know that's not realistic, especially in baseball, where you can't go to Alec Boehm and say, hey, you're out. I mean, you can. We did it to Nick Castellanos and we did it to Taijuan Walker, but you're going to need some players eventually. It's easier to do it to the manager. I knew he was going to be the first one to fall. I am a Rob Thomson guy. I think that he generally did very well. Was he a perfect manager? No, he wasn't. But he was 2 wins away from a World Series. And what happened? Did he mess up in that World Series, or did they get no hit in Game 4? And then they came out and they lost a close one in Game 5. Again, I'm not saying he did everything perfect, but the Phillies did that. They were in control of the NLCS. And look, I was there in Arizona. Craig Kimbrell had no business being on the field. So Topper is not without blame, but they left Arizona up 3-2, and then they came back to Philadelphia and scored, 3 runs in 2 games? We can put that on him, or we can acknowledge the reality of the situation, which is it was not entirely his fault, but he's taken the blame because life isn't fair and baseball isn't fair, and that's what it is. And I do agree that a move had to be made. I'm not sure that you're going to get this great disparity in personalities going from Rob Thomson to Don Mattingly. It kind of seems like, they're the same guy. So I don't know that Mattingly is going to go in and shake anything up. He came out tonight with the exact same lineup they've been using. And I would think, if anything, he is just the placeholder. He said before the season he didn't want to manage anymore. So now, and we're going to get to the Alex Cora thing in a minute, but the fact of the matter is something did have to be done. And the only thing that's going to turn me on Topper now, Bubba, is if your speculation is true and he fell on his sword to protect Kevin Long. In that case, I'm no longer a Topper fan, because my guy, that's the guy that should go. That's the guy that should go. Now, I know if he went, Topper would probably go. I get it. It's a package deal and all that. But the fact that he still has a job today is crazy to me. I do not understand. And we'll get to that later, too. I'm just like, I'm fired up because the part of me that wants life to be fair is upset about this. The part of me that knows life can't be fair and something did have to be done, and there has to be accountability when you have an aging core. You cannot sit around and be like, well, it's early, we'll wait. I understand the urgency. I get it, but it's just a shame. It's just a shame that the guy put up 4 really good years as a manager and 1 really bad month, and that's enough to seal his fate. It sucks, but life sucks sometimes. What can you do?
Yeah, you can tell, I think the biggest issue with how this season started is how stale everything felt. The players weren't performing. There was no juice in the clubhouse. Some of that's the fault of Dave Dombrowski for bringing back a largely similar roster from last season. But you could say, hey, they won 95 plus games last year and the year before. They deserve to run it back. But there's concern around an aging core. Now, the 2, aging bats, you could say, and Harper and Schwarber are the ones that are the only 2 that are hitting. But it's really just been a lackluster feel from spring training on. Just almost getting through the motions, assuming they're going to make the postseason. Wake me up in October, and then let's go. And it doesn't work like that in baseball. There's 162 games and only 6 playoff spots in the National League. And there's a lot of good teams in the NL this year, which is a whole nother part of the conversation of can they even get out of this hole, even after this move. So, part of it to me was not just the start, but how everything felt. And yeah, Thomson isn't known for his juice. He's known for his steady hand. And that is a great thing over 162 games when things are going well, or things are starting to maybe go, 50-50. But when things are just awful, it's hard to get that juice back.
And that's what it ultimately comes down to. If you're a manager and the players play, they're going to make you and your methodology look great. And if they fail, they're going to make you look bad. Whether it's individual moves, I said on the podcast before, he intentionally walked Ohtani to get to Betts, and then Johan Duran walked Betts with the bases loaded to tie the game. Everybody pinned that on Rob. Nobody pinned that on Duran for not throwing a strike. Then I watched in the World Series when John Schneider intentionally walked Ohtani 5 times in a row, and Betts couldn't get him in. And everybody was like, damn, John Schneider's a genius. Exact same move. I would argue that Schneider's was more reckless. If the players do good, you look good. If they do bad, you look bad. It was a steady hand for 4 years. Now it is a lack of urgency, and it's all just perception. But what's done is done. He's gone now, and I thank him for his service and for giving us, frankly, 4 of the best years of Phillies baseball in my life. They were frustrating at times, for sure, but when you remember, he was coming off of the Maikel Franco, Cesar Hernandez kind of era. man, it could have been a lot worse. So that being said, let's get to his replacement now. Don Mattingly steps in, and I understand all of the different feelings on Rob Thomson and the job he did. I get them all. One thing I'm having trouble understanding, and I'm going to let you guys maybe try to get me on board with this a little bit. I do not understand, even a little bit, the excitement and enthusiasm for Don Mattingly, given his managerial track record. But he is taking over now. He looks like he's well on his way to a 1-0 start in a Phillies uniform. I'm rooting for him, but I don't know. I'm just not seeing the same level of excitement that everyone else is. What am I missing here?
I don't think you're really missing much. There's not too much to get excited about. Again, we're talking about Topper and Mattingly, not these managers. They're not throwing chairs against, in the locker room to get guys psyched up. That's not the way they're doing things, and not many people do it anymore. That's kind of an old school baseball thing. You don't really see too much anymore. And would our guys respond well to that? Probably not after getting, this white glove treatment they've been getting from Topper for a while, or so we think it's white glove treatment. It's also possible Topper took care of things behind the scenes, and until they all just got too complacent with him, and now we're stuck with not stuck with Mattingly, but it's obvious he doesn't want to be our long-term manager. So I thought it was very important they said he was the interim manager, and they're not trying to make him anything more than that because obviously they want to go after Corey. So I'm fine with Mattingly. Yeah, it's going to be more of the same, but if it can send the the shockwave through the lineup and get everyone willing to execute, just because they're not executing, they haven't been for a while. On an historic level, and we've all had our fair share of fun with all these stats about how bad they've been, but they got to turn it around at some point, and we got a lot of home games. We have a lot of easy opponents coming up, so this is a good chance. Just the same way when Topper took over for Girardi, it's a good chance for the team to get on a winning streak, and and then Mattingly can look like a genius, just as you were saying, Barker.
In terms of internal candidates, it really was between Mattingly and Dusty Watham. I am not surprised that they picked Mattingly over Watham just because of the experience factor. Having said that, I do think it was also intentional because it sets up an off-season for a true managerial search, which would be the first of which in the Dombrowski era. He has not had a true off-season managerial search since he got here. He inherited Joe Girardi, and Rob Thomson earned the right to maintain the role after the interim tag was removed. So this is truly going to be the first off-season, unless something happens in great fashion with Mattingly this year. But this is going to be the first offseason where he gets that true offseason to hire a manager and put that place on the roster in his mold. There's no surprise that the Cora rumors kind of came out. I mean, they have a long-standing history with each other, and I would not be surprised if he ends up coming to Philly in the off season. Having said that, I'm not the biggest Mattingly fan either for this season, but it's an interim role. I don't think there's anything really to be excited for or not excited for because it is temporary.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm at. And I'm glad to hear you guys say that. And maybe you haven't gotten as many excited texts as I have today. It's really weird. By the third one I got from from different friends of mine who were like, Mattingly. I was like, are we talking about the same guy? Like, I understand. He was a hell of a ball player. He was former MVP. He was great. But like most great ball players, he has not had success as a manager. You look at the track record of great ball players, they often fail as managers. When I moved out to LA in 2013, I saw the 3 years that he made the playoffs, and the moves he made in those 3 years are not for the faint of heart. For any Phillies fans who have taken the time to complain about Rob Thomson's in-game managing, buckle up for the Donnie Baseball October experience, because it is a wild ride. And some of it is like,
those were the years when the Dodgers couldn't get it done. Those were the years where every October just felt like the Dodgers were there to find a way to collapse. And there were a lot of situations where Mattingly just looked like he was out of place. Him being the short-term answer in a year that you start 9-19 may not be the end of the world, but I don't think he's a long-term replacement.
For sure, I just want to get that on the record, because I'm hearing people saying like, "Well, I like what he did." I watched the Phillies podcast today, and Ruben Amaro was like, "Oh, he did a great job in Miami." No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He was the manager in Miami for 7 years, and he had one winning season, and it was COVID, and he went 31-29, and they gave him manager of the year. And now they're like, "Well, he was the manager of the year in Miami," with all the asterisks available.
And then they make the postseason the next season after he leaves.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
We might not even see October Mattingly. It's like it's not set in stone we're making the playoffs right now. I mean, just saying. We got ways to go.
That's a real glass half full approach. We might not have to deal with October Mattingly. That's a good call. I have no problem with him as the interim manager. Because I do agree that it's just for the end of the season. I do find it, and I guess this will lead into our next point, I do find it interesting that, Mike, you were talking about how Dombo hasn't had an opportunity to have a real managerial search yet. And I agree. And I think that's something that every general manager should get to do, which is why I found it so interesting that he was ready to completely give up that opportunity and hire Alex Cora without talking to anyone else. Or waiting to see who would even be available at the end of the offseason. I know they worked together in Boston before, but that was part of this whole equation as well. And the timeline for this thing was very interesting, because I thought Topper would be fired on the day off. When he got through yesterday, I was like, well, I guess they're giving him more time. And then he got fired on game day. And I think the reason behind that is they spent yesterday trying to convince Alex Cora to replace him. Now, I don't know if they had told Topper that he was fired and they just made it public today, or they're already kind of like trying to find his replacement before they tell him. But let me lay out for you real quick the Dave Dombrowski timeline just over the last 7 months. This is since they lost to the Dodgers. We all know he did basically nothing in the offseason. He decided to run it back. His only free agent additions were Adolis Garcia and a couple of bullpen pieces. He re-signed a couple of guys. Some people would say he overpaid them. I'm not going to get into that because I didn't hate any of the contracts individually. He completely misplayed the Nick Castellanos hand, held on to him through the duration of the offseason, all the way up to the start of spring training, turned that into a distraction, ended up giving him up for absolutely nothing. Now they're paying him $19 million to not play for the Phillies this year. He extended Rob Thomson because he didn't want him to be on a lame duck contract, only to fire him before April ended. He got nothing in return for Taijuan Walker, releasing him before April ended. And really, that was about it. And there was the Bo Bichette thing, which I do not fault him for. I think once the Mets gave that ridiculous contract, you had to back off. And I do think that they had a deal in place with Bichette and everything like that. So I'm not giving him shit about that. But if we're looking at the entire resume, it has been a brutal 7 months for Dave Dombrowski. And some would argue not the best overall tenure with the Phillies. I'd like you guys to assess his performance and answer this question. How hot is his seat right now?
I think it just got flaming hot. When you fire the manager, the next person that everybody looks at is the president of baseball operations, who puts the roster together, who puts the coaching staff together. Just like we were talking about how when the players perform well, it makes the manager look good, and when the players do poorly, it makes the manager look poor. Same could be said for the president of baseball operations. All of the flaws that have piled up, whether it's a big contract or a small contract, his free agent signings over the past several years have largely turned into crap. You already mentioned the Casti and the Walker contracts. That's $38 million that effectively just went out the door for zero production this year. Previous years were, just as bad effectively. But now there's concern over Nola's contract. There's 4.5 years left. Turner's contract is going to be an albatross. 7.5 years left on that one. And then there's these short-term deals that just, you can't even get the full season out of the player. I mean, you got Didi Gregorius, Chase Anderson, Odubel Herrera, Juris Familiar, Josh Harrison, Whit Merrifield, Joe Ross, all signed big league deals and didn't make it through the end of the contract under Dave Dombrowski. You have very few prospects that have made an impact, and not a great farm system in terms of farm system rankings. If anything, there's a bright side out of the Dave Dombrowski era. It's the pitching development has definitely improved, but the hitting development has been atrocious. Just about everybody that has really come into the organization or come up in the organization has flatlined or stalled out. You look at Stott, you look at Bohm this year in particular, but it's not just those two. I mean, there's countless names that just fail to really make an impact over the long run. So again, Dombo's on the hot seat, and I just hope that Middleton sees the errors of his ways.
Agreed. Dombo's seat is very hot right now, and I do just want to keep piling on because I think he has had a very terrible last couple months. But I also got to say, the Phillies just farm system did not set him up for any type of success either. We can't develop anyone. We haven't developed anyone since Utley, Howard, and Rollins. Like, maybe our best hitters like that we've probably developed since then are Hoskins, maybe JP.
You can stop there.
Yeah, we have no one. Like, we don't have anyone good. And like pitching wise, it's Nola and Sanchez, which, I mean, hey, look, Sanchez is turning into an absolute ace, and that's fantastic. But we have just been doing a terrible job as a franchise for a while at developing our players. And I feel like that's kind of handcuffed Dombrowski a little bit. And that's my feeling on why he doesn't feel like he's in the hot seat. He got asked a question today at a press conference, basically saying, "Do you feel like you're on the hot seat?" And he laughed it off, like some billionaire throwing like $100 bill at someone begging for money. Oh, you need this way more than me. Go for it. Like, it's just like, come on, Dave. He was way too confident in himself, and that makes me think Middleton really likes him and thinks that he deserves his own shot to keep going. I don't know. It's just Middleton's also responsible for this too. Why are we in this situation? Middleton's the one in charge, is the ultimate one in charge, and we're still, barely treading water at the moment. So, Dombrowski's on the hot seat. Would love to get rid of him, but I don't know. Who else are we going to get? Who else are we going to bring in with all of these aging contracts? Who else is going to want this job? Does Alex Cora really want to come and play and manage our team with all these aging guys? Just getting older and older? I don't know. Parker, what do you think?
I mean, it's a great question. This team is not trending in the right direction. It's not. Now, look, I say that knowing full well that a month ago we were all, I think, fairly assessing this team as a really talented team that was going to win 90 games. Is it possible, a la the first half of Space Jam, that all of these guys have been sapped of any powers they've ever had and they'll never be able to hit a baseball again? I suppose that's possible, but I think more than likely they've been playing a lot worse than they actually are, and they're due for a nice little hot streak. Now, will that get them to 90 wins? Will that get them in the playoffs? I don't know. But they're not as bad as they've played so far this season. So I think there's going to be a little bounce back. And I think, frankly, there was a little bit of that in 2022 when Topper took over. It's like they were probably going to be better than they were under Girardi regardless. And it'll happen again this year, and that's kind of par for the course. But the overarching theme of this team is there's not a lot to really look forward to at all. And when you bring in Dave Dombrowski, you know that. Look at Dave Dombrowski's track record. He is brought in to get a team across the finish line and get a parade. And he did exactly what he thought he was supposed to do, and he almost got us a parade. This whole thing would be different if they had won 2 more games against the Astros, or maybe 2 more games against the Diamondbacks and then played a Rangers team that I thought they were way better than. This whole conversation would be different, but that's not how it happened. Dombrowski made the moves that he thought could win a championship, and they didn't win a championship. Now you got to pay the piper. Now you're on the back end of that. The question was never, oh, yeah, are they going to continue to be good? It's how long is this window open? And I think we went into this thinking we had another year, maybe 2, which was the same thing we thought at the end of 2011, by the way. I don't think anybody thought that window was slamming shut in 2012. There's a lot of 2012 in this team so far this year. A lot of parallels. So I think Dombrowski did what he's always done, which is go for a championship and then leave and be like, hey, not my problem anymore. Have fun rebuilding. And that's kind of where we're at. I don't know why Alex Cora would want to manage this team. What you have is there's some things you do have. You have an ownership that is clearly willing to spend money. But organizationally, the failures are consistent and across the board. It's not a really well-run organization. It's just not. And if I can come up with any sort of silver lining to this as a baseball fan, I hope that the performance of the Phillies and Mets this year, if they're not able to turn it around and they both remain bad, I hope that this puts a significant dent in the absolutely ridiculous argument that they need a salary cap because you can just go out and buy a championship. Because everybody points to the Dodgers, who are a brilliantly run organization from top to bottom. And then you got the Phillies and Mets over here being like, hey, just so you know, you can have a lot of money and still be really bad at this. And that's what they're doing.
Really bad year for the CBA to expire and small market teams wanting a salary cap because they can't compete. But in all honesty, the worst thing you can be in baseball is expensive and bad at the same time, because it limits your flexibility. It really hampers your ability to change the roster because nobody wants your crap that's expensive. And so you're kind of stuck with bad players unless you just want to cut bait and spend a lot of salary on nothing. So that's my biggest concern with the Dombo era and where it is right now is, have we gotten to that point where we're expensive, which we knew we were going to be expensive, but are we expensive and bad where we can't change anything to fix it?
That's a great question. I don't know. The other downfall to being expensive and bad is that the fans want nothing to do with it. The perception of the fans changes greatly. When Ryan Howard was making $5 million a year and striking out, everybody was like, God, he's going to hit 50 homers. I love this guy. When Ryan Howard was striking out and making $25 million a year, now he wasn't as good after the Achilles injury. I understand that. But all of a sudden, fans are focused more on the other stuff. When the expectations are low and all of a sudden a Pat Burrell or somebody comes up and they start, hitting 30 home runs, you're like, oh, who is this kid? I like this kid. And then he gets a multi-year deal and you're like, this guy, I hate him. It is a tough product to watch. And as much as Bryce Harper is a future Hall of Famer, as much as Kyle Schwarber is super fun to watch because he's capable of hitting the ball into the parking lot, fans have seen it. Tickets are too expensive now. Parking's too expensive. Beers, everything's too expensive. I'm not bringing my family out to see this team that is not giving me anything new or fun or exciting. So they're costing themselves a lot of, when you run this team back, what you're saying is we're going to get fans in the door by winning. Anything other than winning is just not going to get the job done. So yeah, it's a really rough situation all around. And by the way, one more thing before we get off Domba, because I didn't necessarily have a problem with the not elite comment about Harper. I thought it was kind of an honest assessment of the season he had, and Harper blew it out of proportion, and I understand why he took it personally, but I don't want to hear anybody else looking at this team and talking about whether or not Bryce Harper is elite. Because I'll tell you what, he might not be elite anymore. He might be great. He might not be great. He might be very good. What he is better than every other bum in this lineup by a long shot. He's the best player on the team offensively, straight up. So we could sit here and be like, well, we're going to dissect him to death and break down everything he does. I don't want to hear it, because that guy is the only one who has really been hitting this year. Schwarber is boom or bust. He's the only other one with an OPS over 800. Marsh has been pretty good. But the rest of this team, I don't want to hear one more word about Bryce Harper when Bryson Stott and Alec Boehm are stinking the joint up the way they are. Adolis Garcia, it's just like, no, I'm done talking about Bryce Harper and what he needs to do differently when he's the only one who is hitting the ball hard anywhere. So that's my last thought on that. Speaking of how they can hit, Kevin Long, we alluded to it, is still here. Still here. Bubba, you said, did you get that from somewhere, the idea? Because I heard that, I read that on Reddit today too, and I couldn't figure out if this was substantiated or just a theory people were running with. But the idea that Topper fell on the sword to protect Kevin Long, where did you get that?
I heard that on the what is it? Either Jim Salisbury, I think Jim Salisbury said it on the Phillies podcast today. I think it was him, or maybe Ruben or Todd. I don't know, one of those guys. But one of them mentioned that possibility because they were talking about the kind of character of a guy Topper is. That's the way he would go out, and it kind of, I mean, it fits, and I see it. I think it gives Dombo some options as well by getting rid of Topper. And if things don't turn around, they can still get rid of Kevin Long after this. Maybe that's another thing they can try. But I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to rock. They thought getting rid of Topper was also enough to rock the boat. And we'll see how that goes, and hope that's how it ends up being. Because, well, I don't know. Do we want to play well? Do we want to win games, or do we want to keep losing and then get rid of Kevin Long, and then just kind of, what are we doing the rest of the season, besides watching Painter and Crawford? So I don't know.
Just get rid. I don't care if they win every game for the rest of this. He should be gone right now. He should be gone right now. I don't understand how, if this is true, if this is really what happened, let's just operate under that assumption for a minute. Dave Dombrowski woke up and said, I believe that Kevin Long needs to be fired. I'm the president of baseball operations, and I think he needs to go. And then he let Topper talk him out of it? Like, it seems like it could be plausible. It also does not seem like terribly good leadership to be like, I believe this has to be done, and I am not going to do it because I'm letting somebody else talk me out of it. I want to get your guys' overall thoughts on Kevin Long, because this has turned into a crusade for me. I'm wondering, like, am I crazy because I have not seen him deliver literally any results? The only positive I know of him is that, Harper and Schwarber and a couple of the other guys really like him from previous stops from their time in Washington. Well, those guys can already hit. I don't need a hitting coach to sit down with Bryce Harper and be like, hey, here's how you hit a baseball. He's going to the Hall of Fame. He knows. Schwarber knows how to hit a baseball. So can Kevin Long maybe sit down with some young guys who could use some coaching and teach them something new? Because I have yet to see that at all.
And that's where we've struggled the most, is developing the offensive talent. And whether it's the inconsistencies of Stott, the wild inconsistencies of Boehm, an inability to really develop any outfield production over the past couple of years. Marsh hasn't been able to hit lefties. I mean, there's just so many to talk about. What I did find interesting, in comparison to how the Red Sox organization cleared house after firing Cora, they also fired just about all of the coaching staff as well. And how that was a drastically different method of changing the coaching staff compared to how Dombo handled everything today. I think it goes to show that there is still some good qualities of the coaching staff that he wanted to keep around, and felt that only removing Topper from the scenario was enough to try and jolt the team in some way. Again, we haven't seen necessarily the results of Kevin Long, but the players seem to like him. And I think that while it is a results-oriented business, I think that says something as to why he's still here.
Yeah, with
Bubba,
Matt, I mean, I think when you're bringing in Mattingly, a guy who doesn't want to be your long-term manager too, I think it makes sense. Like, you're not going to get rid of your hitting coach and your manager at the same time. When you have a manager who's probably just saying, "Okay, I'll do this, but only for this season," maybe you don't want to get rid of, the right-hand man there. But I mean, I hate to say that because I want Kevin Long gone too. I don't think he's doing a good job at all. I mean, do we give him credit for Brandon Marsh against the righties only? And then what are we doing about the lefties? He hasn't done anything there. So I don't know. It's really tough to know without being in the clubhouse, I think, to really understand like what. Yeah, all right. It's great you have a great report, but as we just found out with Rob Thomson, that can only get you so far. You need to be producing results, and yeah, he doesn't seem to be doing it. So I don't know. I mean, sure. Does he maybe help Schwarber hit a few more home runs every year? Yes, that's great. And I do love watching Kyle Schwarber hit home runs. It's the best part of watching Phillies at this point. But, like, yeah, we need to see Bohm and Stott actually just producing. I mean, the hitting coach has to be responsible for that at some point, right?
I would think so. It's really interesting that you bring up the Brandon Marsh hitting lefties thing. The quote from Kevin Long a few days ago was enough for me to fire him right there when he was like, I think part of the problem is we just got a left-handed batting practice pitcher. These guys haven't been able to hit off of a lefty in batting practice. So I think that's part of the problem. I read a quote like that and I'm like, burn the whole organization down. Like, just start over. Just the stadium, bring in an exorcist to clear the premises and just build from the ground up, because what an insane thing to say in 2026. We didn't have a guy who throws left. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Go to a high school. Go to a junior college. Be like, do any of you guys throw left-handed? And can you throw 68 miles an hour down the middle? We need a batting.
I can throw about 55 at this point in my life. I could
lefty?
Probably lefty. So I can get half the battle there.
You should have volunteered your services. Maybe we wouldn't be 10-19 right now. By the way, 10-19, the Phillies did wrap up the victory, a 7-0 win. Trey Turner, 4 hits out of the leadoff spot. So all's well in Philadelphia right now. Things are looking good.
1-0 in the Donnie baseball era.
I did want to ask you this because we kind of glossed over it a little bit, and then we can get out of here because I don't know how much more there is to say. I feel like we're on the same page with a lot of this, but if you're Don Mattingly, and maybe it doesn't matter because he already said he doesn't want to manage, I would feel some type of way about them giving me the job and then coming out in the press conference and being like, well, yeah, we wanted this other guy for the job, but he wasn't willing to do it, so we went with Mattingly instead. Am I overreacting, or was that like a crazy thing to admit to publicly?
I think that's a fair reaction, but then also I think they must have discussed that with him before he agreed to come on. I mean, his son's the GM, he's the manager, and apparently the only other time this has happened before is when Connie Mack was the manager for the A's back in the day. Apparently his son might have been GM. I mean, that's kind of crazy, but so I don't know. I think it's a weird situation that they probably talked out, and he must have agreed to have been comfortable with with coming with this. Like, he must have known, like, he has to know Dombo's going to try and get his guy if he has the chance. He's Donnie baseball. He understands it's a business. So I think it's a fair thought, but I think he must have known when he took the job.
Okay, that's reasonable. Gentlemen, what did I miss? do we have anything else we got to cover before we get out of here? Any closing thoughts on the events of the last 24 to 48 hours?
Phillies are the 29th team to get to 10 wins. The only team behind them, the Mets, and they're probably an inning away from actually hitting that mark themselves. But we no longer have the worst record in baseball.
Historically, like the worst start to a Philly season I've ever seen. It's got to get better at some point, right? I keep saying that. It's got to get better at some point, but I've also been saying that since 2016, and it hasn't working out.
It will. It'll get better. It'll get better. 9-19 is a pace for, I think, like 52, 53 wins, and they're gonna get more than that. It will get better. Will it get good enough? That's a different question. But I guess good to start off this new era with a win, whether it was deserved or not for Topper to be fired at this point. You might as well hope that it sparks something and that the Phillies, win this whole thing thanks to the steady hand of Don Mattingly. The worst case scenario would be him making it to the World Series, losing, and that forcing them to give him 3 more years in which he never gets the job done. But, what
I'll
are the
take
odds
that at this point, quite honestly.
Yeah, you and me both. All right, well, that's everything for us. Salute to Rob Thomson. Thank you for all the good memories, and sorry about the last month. To everyone else, hit the fucking ball, please, and to you guys, hit that fucking subscribe button, please. That was pretty cool. I didn't plan on doing that, but I kind of nailed it. Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next week at our normal time, back on Monday with the Specific Jawns podcast. We'll see you guys then.